She called it highly inappropriate, but I couldn't stop noticing the way she smiled at me. The story opens with the young male narrator stepping into the office for the first time that week, a quiet Monday morning where the usual hum of computers and murmured conversations fills the air. Everything seems ordinary, until he notices her, his boss, a woman in her early 40s, moving with an effortless grace across the office floor. There's a subtle magnetism in the way she carries herself, a blend of confidence and calm that makes the rest of the office fade into the background. He's immediately drawn to small details, the gentle sway of her hair as she turns toward a colleague, the way sunlight glints off the strands, and the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air long after she's passed. There's a certain warmth in her presence, a quiet authority softened by moments of subtle humor or thoughtfulness. His attention lingers on the curve of her smile as she nods in acknowledgement to someone, and for a split second, it feels like she's aware of him too. Inside, he wrestles with a mix of curiosity and hesitation. She shouldn't notice me, not really, he thinks, feeling the weight of both admiration and nervous excitement. But there's a subtle tension in the air, an unspoken question that hangs between them even in this fleeting moment. Every glance, every movement, feels charged with meaning, even though outwardly nothing is different from any ordinary office morning. The sensory world around him amplifies these small observations. The rustle of her blazer as she walks, the soft tap of her shoes against the polished floor, and the gentle movements of her hands as she organizes papers all seem to register more vividly than usual. Even the distant hum of the office printer and the low murmur of conversations fade into a quiet backdrop, as if the universe itself is nudging him to notice her more closely. Yet he remains aware of the line between admiration and propriety. He watches her from across the room, trying to gauge whether the fleeting warmth of her smile carries intention or simply kindness. The subtle crinkle at the corners of her eyes when she laughs quietly, the poised tilt of her head when she listens attentively, these small gestures begin to feel like secret invitations into a world he's only beginning to glimpse. By the end of the scene, the stage is set, the narrator is captivated, curious, and slightly anxious. The audience feels his internal tension, the magnetic pull of someone just out of reach, and the promise of a slow-burning connection that will gradually unfold. The first spark has been struck, gentle yet undeniable, leaving both him and the audience quietly anticipating the next encounter. After that first, unforgettable glimpse, the narrator begins noticing her in quieter, smaller ways. The office, once a backdrop of mundane routines, now feels alive with subtle cues that draw him closer to her presence. A hallway glance here, a brief exchange of words there, each interaction feels weighted with unspoken meaning, leaving him both intrigued and slightly unnerved. He remembers the morning she passed him with a polite nod, her eyes briefly meeting his before she continued on her way. It was a fleeting moment, just a fraction of a second, but something about the tilt of her head and the quiet warmth in her gaze made it linger in his mind. He finds himself replaying it, analyzing the soft curve of her lips and the slight arch of her brow, wondering if it was merely kindness or something more. Small interactions begin to accumulate, each one revealing layers of her personality he hadn't noticed before. She has a subtle wit, a dry humor that catches him off guard during a meeting. He notices the way her hand brushes lightly against a stack of papers, or the delicate tap of her fingers on the desk when she's deep in thought. These small details, the way sunlight hits her hair, the faint scent of her perfume carried across the office, become impossible for him to ignore. Internally, he struggles with hesitation. He reminds himself that she is his superior, that there are boundaries, yet a growing curiosity makes his heart beat a little faster every time their paths cross. Each smile, each glance that lingers a moment too long, feels like a gentle pull he cannot resist. He's drawn to her confidence, her quiet grace, and the way she seems both approachable and untouchable at the same time. The tension is subtle but undeniable. They exchange short, teasing remarks that walk the line between professionalism and flirtation. Perhaps she comments on his work with a knowing smile, or he makes a light-hearted joke that earns a small laugh from her, an intimate sound that seems to echo just for him. These shared moments, brief and fleeting, plant the seeds of connection, making the office feel simultaneously ordinary and charged with possibility. By the end of this keynote, the audience senses the narrator's growing fascination and emotional attachment. The tension is no longer a single spark, it's a slow burn, quietly threading through hallways, shared smiles, and casual touches. The stage is now set for deeper interactions, teasing conversations, and the gradual unfolding of an emotional bond that is as respectful as it is quietly irresistible. By now, the young narrator has grown increasingly aware of her presence, not just her authority, but the quiet magnetic pull she carries. The office feels smaller somehow when she's near, as if every glance, every movement, is amplified in his perception. Today, that subtle tension reaches its first playful peak. It begins with a small mistake on his part, a slightly cheeky comment during a meeting, or perhaps a casual observation about an office routine. He notices the way she pauses, eyebrows slightly arched, as her lips press together in restrained amusement. The room seems to hush around them, the usual chatter fading into the background. He feels a jolt of nervous anticipation. He knows he's stepping close to a line, yet something about her demeanor encourages a daring honesty. Her response is calm, precise, but carries the weight of teasing restraint. This is highly inappropriate. There's no anger in her tone, just a gentle, pointed correction that somehow deepens the tension instead of dissolving it. The words linger in the air, almost daring him to respond, and he feels the subtle pull of attraction, a magnetic curiosity that he cannot ignore. He chooses to respond, not defiantly, but playfully, acknowledging the tension without breaking decorum. "So, why do you keep smiling?" The question hovers between them, charged with a mix of humor and boldness. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, slowly, a small, knowing smile spreads across her face. It's subtle, but in it he sees recognition, a shared understanding of this unspoken connection. The physicality of the moment is almost imperceptible yet deeply felt. He notices how she shifts slightly, the faint brush of her hand against her papers, the tilt of her head as her eyes meet his. There's a warmth in the space between them, a tangible electricity that seems to hum just beneath the surface. His own pulse quickens, and he becomes acutely aware of his breathing, the soft scrape of his chair against the floor, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air like a quiet invitation. Emotionally, this is the turning point. For the narrator, it's exhilarating and terrifying, a playful challenge that reveals layers of personality, intellect, and unspoken vulnerability. For her, the smile, subtle and fleeting, hints at amusement, curiosity, and a hint of approval, all while maintaining the careful boundaries of professionalism. By the end of this scene, the audience feels the first real spark of romantic tension. It's playful, charged, and entirely appropriate for a slow-burn romance, a teasing moment that plants a seed of desire, setting the stage for deeper emotional intimacy and connection in the parts to come. The office, once a neutral backdrop, has become a stage for subtle chemistry, unspoken curiosity, and the quiet thrill of crossing invisible lines without ever breaking them. After that playful, teasing encounter, the narrator's fascination deepens. He begins to notice her in moments beyond official interactions, those quiet, unguarded fragments of life that reveal her true self. The office, once a purely professional environment, has transformed into a stage for subtle, intimate discoveries, where each glance and gesture carries weight far beyond ordinary observation. It's during late afternoon hours that he starts seeing her differently. Perhaps he notices her alone at her desk, papers neatly stacked, yet a faint furrow of concentration softening the otherwise composed lines of her face. She sighs quietly, leaning back in her chair, and for the first time he catches the gentle vulnerability beneath her confident exterior. The sight is unexpected, a woman of poise and authority, yet human in her fatigue, her sighs, her private small smiles when a thought amuses her. He watches, almost breathless, careful not to intrude, but wanting desperately to understand the layers beneath her surface. He notices the smallest details, the way her fingers hover lightly over the keyboard before typing, as though each movement is deliberate, the tilt of her head when reading a report, subtle but expressive, the quiet hum of her pen tapping against the desk, a rhythmic accompaniment to her thought process. These fragments build an emotional map for him, revealing not just her professionalism, but her depth, her intelligence, and the humanity she rarely exposes to the wider office. Internally, he reflects on the contrast between her commanding presence in meetings and the soft, almost tender gestures he observes when she's alone. It's a dichotomy that fascinates him, the way she maintains authority while allowing glimpses of warmth and vulnerability in private moments. He feels a subtle empathy growing, a desire to support, to be present in a world that seems demanding and isolating despite her composed exterior. The narrator becomes attuned to more than just visual cues. The faint scent of her perfume, the soft rustle of her blouse as she reaches for a file, the warm light from the afternoon sun casting gentle shadows across her desk, all of it contributes to a sense of intimacy without intrusion. He experiences the quiet thrill of proximity, the magnetic pull of someone who is both slightly out of reach and yet profoundly present. By the end of this keynote, the audience senses the narrator's emotional investment deepening. The connection is no longer just playful curiosity, it's empathy, admiration, and a growing emotional attachment. The stage is set for meaningful interactions, shared vulnerabilities, and the slow, deliberate unfolding of a bond that transcends age and professional boundaries. The quiet moments he observes now carry weight, foreshadowing the tender, intimate exchanges that will define the next stages of their slow-burn romance. As the story progresses, the office becomes more than just a professional environment, it becomes a backdrop for moments of quiet connection, where the walls of authority soften and true human emotion begins to surface. In this part, the young narrator and his boss begin sharing subtle but meaningful glimpses of vulnerability, forging an emotional intimacy that feels both tender and natural. It starts with a small moment during a project. Perhaps she's reviewing a difficult report, her brow slightly furrowed, her lips pressed together in concentration. He notices the tension in her shoulders, the faint exhale that follows a challenging decision. Without overstepping, he offers a supportive remark, a question that shows attentiveness rather than judgment. She glances at him, a flicker of appreciation in her eyes, and for the first time, he senses that she values more than just his competence, she notices his care. The conversation evolves quietly. He shares a small personal anecdote, perhaps about a minor mistake or a challenge he's faced, and she listens, genuinely engaged. In response, she allows a brief glimpse of her own struggles, perhaps a sigh, a soft laugh, or a subtle admission that she sometimes feels the weight of responsibility more than she lets on. There's no heavy drama, just human honesty. The audience feels the emotional resonance. These moments of openness bridge the professional gap and create a space where trust can grow. Physical proximity enhances the intimacy, but always in a YouTube-safe, respectful way. They sit side by side while reviewing documents, shoulders brushing lightly, or their hands momentarily resting near each other on the edge of the table. Each gesture is subtle, a lean toward the other, a guiding touch on the arm or shoulder, a shared smile that lingers just a heartbeat longer than necessary. These touches communicate warmth, support, and a growing connection without needing words. The sensory world of the office deepens the experience. The soft hum of computers, the faint aroma of coffee, and the gentle slant of afternoon light across the desk create a cocoon of quiet intimacy. Every glance, every small movement, carries significance. He notices the way her eyes light up at a shared joke, the warmth in her tone when she speaks directly to him, the quiet steadiness in her presence that makes him feel both seen and safe. By the end of this keynote, the slow burn connection has shifted from curiosity and playful tension to something more substantial, emotional closeness rooted in trust and mutual respect. The audience feels the subtle thrill of intimacy, the anticipation of deeper connection, and the tender emotional pull that will inevitably lead to moments of heightened tension and closeness in the story's next stages. The groundwork is laid for a relationship that is meaningful, respectful, and deeply human, an age-gap romance that resonates emotionally rather than relying on superficial attraction. The story reaches a turning point as the slow-burn tension, carefully nurtured over weeks of observation, small gestures, and shared vulnerability, begins to crystallize into something more palpable. The office, once merely a professional environment, now serves as a stage for quiet, charged interactions, moments where attraction and emotional intimacy converge, yet remain unspoken, respectful, and suspenseful. It begins with a scenario that naturally brings them closer. Perhaps she stays late to finish work, and he offers to walk her to the parking lot or accompany her to the elevator. The hallways are quieter than usual, the hum of electronics fades, and the outside world feels a step away. The atmosphere is intimate without being forced, a rare pause in their otherwise busy routine. Every footstep, every shift of weight seems amplified in the stillness. The conversation between them deepens. Casual remarks evolve into reflective ones, revealing personal thoughts or glimpses of inner emotion. Perhaps she comments on the challenges of leadership or confides a fleeting worry, and he listens with genuine attentiveness, offering encouragement without overstepping boundaries. Their words are measured but sincere, creating a bridge between curiosity and understanding. Every pause, every slight inflection of tone carries meaning, inviting the audience to sense the unspoken connection building between them. Physical proximity heightens the tension, subtle and charged rather than overt. They walk side by side, shoulders brushing lightly, perhaps her hand briefly grazes his as she reaches for her coat, lingering a moment longer than necessary. He notices the warmth radiating from her, the faint scent of her perfume mixing with the crisp evening air, and the steady cadence of her breath. A shared laugh or quiet comment punctuates the silence, yet beneath the levity lies a simmering intimacy that neither fully acknowledges aloud. Internally, both characters navigate a delicate emotional landscape. He feels admiration, desire, and a deep respect for her experience and poise, while she senses his sincerity, the attentiveness that distinguishes him from colleagues. Their mutual awareness creates an unspoken tension, a magnetic pull tempered by caution and respect, a balance that makes the moment feel electric yet grounded in reality. By the end of this keynote, the audience is fully immersed in the slow-burn climax of their emotional tension. The attraction is undeniable but restrained, the connection is intimate yet respectful. This is the peak of subtle desire and shared vulnerability, setting the stage for the story's final resolution, where warmth, mutual trust, and affection will emerge fully, leaving both characters and audience satisfied. The office, once ordinary, now feels like a world suspended, a place where quiet longing and careful attention create a meaningful, emotionally charged experience. After weeks of quiet glances, teasing moments, and subtle vulnerability, the story reaches its emotional resolution. The young narrator and his boss have navigated the tension of their slow-burn connection with care, respect, and growing trust. Now, the attraction and intimacy they have been cultivating find a satisfying, tender expression, still gentle, still appropriate, yet profoundly meaningful. The scene opens in the office late in the day. Perhaps they are finishing a project together, sitting side by side at the desk as sunlight slants softly through the windows. The world outside hums gently, unnoticed, as they focus on each other and the quiet comfort of shared presence. The previous weeks of observation, playfulness, and emotional vulnerability culminate in a serene sense of mutual understanding. Both recognize the bond forming between them. Physical gestures remain subtle yet deeply significant. A hand brushes his as they reach for the same document, she allows the moment to linger just slightly, a silent acknowledgement of connection. When he helps her adjust a stack of papers or offers a light touch on her shoulder, it carries warmth rather than intention, an unspoken message of care and attentiveness. He notices how her eyes soften when they meet his, the corners crinkling with amusement and trust. Every touch, every glance, feels charged with intimacy yet restrained with respect. Emotionally, both characters are present and open. He senses her quiet vulnerability alongside her natural authority, while she acknowledges his sincerity and attentiveness. Their dialogue is gentle and reflective. They share laughter over minor office frustrations, exchange subtle compliments, and indulge in moments of quiet conversation that deepen their emotional connection. The slow, careful unfolding of trust has allowed them to appreciate not just each other's presence but their character, their thoughtfulness, and the humanity beneath their respective roles. The narrative closes with a scene outside the office, perhaps walking together toward the elevator or standing under the evening sky. She smiles, letting him catch the warmth of it, and he responds with a quiet grin, feeling the subtle flutter of anticipation that is no longer anxious but comforting. The tension that once defined their interactions has transformed into an easy, shared intimacy, a closeness that is both emotional and physical without requiring anything overt or inappropriate. By the end of this keynote, the audience experiences a complete emotional arc. The slow burn attraction has blossomed into a mature, respectful, and tender connection. The age difference is naturally acknowledged through their perspectives and interactions, not forced explanations. The story closes on a note of warmth, mutual trust, and a promise of ongoing closeness, leaving viewers satisfied with a realistic, YouTube-friendly depiction of a meaningful, age-gap romance. The office, once merely a workplace, now stands as a space where genuine human connection can quietly, profoundly thrive. If you felt the slow burn tension and couldn't help but root for them, hit that like button and subscribe for more age-gap romance stories. Share your favorite moment in the comments. I'd love to hear which spark had you smiling.